So we will get started. My name is Jessica Leichtweisz. I'm a BCBA. I'm the CEO of Hope Education Services. I partnered with Dr. Katie. She's the CEO of ABA Mindset. Together with the Behavior Bosses, we both have our own events and we both do things together. And one of the things we do is these webinars. We also have a course together, which we'll share with you later. So today we're just going to go over 5 practice BCBA exam questions. What I'm going to do is read them out loud, give you a chance to answer them. When you do, please put your answer in the chat. Please put it privately, either to myself or to Dr. Katie, so there's no reactivity. If you're watching this on YouTube, you will pause it and you'll answer the question because we are going to take away all the dead time for YouTube between the actual questions. So if you're using this to study later, then you don't have to worry about all the waiting time. Also, if you registered for this event, not if you got the Zoom link from someone, but if you actually registered with the form on the website we gave you, then you will get this in the recording mode as well. So you can use it in your study groups or use it in your own studying and you don't have to worry about all that dead time. So I'll read the questions and the choices out loud. I know a lot of you guys are multitasking, doing dishes, taking care of kids, which I totally respect because I did that too when I was studying. So we'll read, Tanya, an RBT, was struggling with the interventions that her BCBA put in place. She was expected to use a token board, FCT, NCR, a visual schedule, differential reinforcement of alternative behavior, and a communication board. Tanya found it way too complicated. The BCBA conducted a dropout component analysis and left only functional communication training and NCR in. Which attitude of science does the making the intervention more simple represent? So which attitude of science does this represent? All right, I got a lot of really good answers here. I think everybody got this. So this is parsimony, right? So parsimony is simple. So we want to make things simple. So something that's parsimonious would be the most simple explanation. So that is why the answer here is A. So very good. Let's move on to question 2.
BCBA should consider all of the following when choosing interventions except A, social significance, B, social validity, C, client preference, or D, preference assessments. All right, you guys. So your best answer here is going to be D, your preference assessments. When you are choosing interventions, you do need to make sure that the behaviors that you're choosing to change have social significance, that there's social validity, you have buy-in from your mediators, and that you are utilizing your client's preferences. Although preference assessments may help you figure out what may be a possible reinforcer for your client, it's not what you're focusing on when choosing interventions. So your best answer here is D because this is a negation question.
All right, guys, let's move on to question 3. It says here, Cynthia is a BCBA who is working with Jillian. Jillian is able to get ready for school with a visual schedule, but she is constantly missing the bus. Which should Cynthia put in place? A limited hold, B, a punishment procedure, C, a new visual schedule, and D, a schedule with leaps ahead to save time. All right, so I tricked most of you here, which is what my intention was. So I love to trick you, not because I want to trick you on the exam, but because I really want you to know these terms. So sometimes we throw things in here to throw you off. So I'm going to start explaining this from the backwards to the beginning because most of you guys selected D, a schedule with leaps ahead to save time. So when you're talking about backwards chaining, sometimes you use what's called leaps ahead. And what that means is that when you use a multiple opportunity probe in order to assess where a learner is, what you find is that they know how to do some steps, but they don't know how to do other steps. The steps that they know how to do, you don't need to teach those particular steps individually. So if you're using backwards chaining, if you're going to have 5 steps, right, and you're using traditional backwards chaining, you would teach step 5. Then you would teach step 4 and 5. Then you would teach steps 3, 4, 5, and 3, 4, and 5, right? Then you would do 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But sometimes learners know how to do some of the steps, but you would identify not if you did a single opportunity probe, but if you did a multiple opportunity probe. So if you did a multiple opportunity probe and you found that the learners already knew how to do steps 2 and 3, You don't need to teach those in their own sequence. You could just teach 5 and then 4 and 5. Then you could do 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then 1, 2, 3, and 4 and 5, right? You don't need to, or even just 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You don't need to do 3, 4, 5 or 2, 3, 4, 5 because they already know how to do steps 2 and 3. So you're not going to break those down into individual steps for them to learn. That will save times in terms of teaching for how long it takes, but it's not going to make it so that Jillian doesn't miss her bus because it's not going to help Jillian in order to do things faster. So to save time, it saves time in the teaching process, but here that's not what we're talking about. So that was there just to throw you off. Now, a new visual schedule is also not the answer. That would refer to essentially making the task analysis smaller. Realistically, if she has to brush her teeth and wash her face and make her bed and get changed, taking steps out isn't really going to be the solution. You're not going to want to change the visual schedule. You could change the schedule, but again, unless you're taking steps out, it's not going to reduce the time in which it's taking Jillian to get ready for school. So that's not the answer. Using a punishment procedure, it could be something that you do, right? You could punish her for missing the bus. I know one of the clients I work with, the father, he makes the child walk to school if he misses his bus and they don't live super far and he walks with him. And that works really, really well for that child. But the most realistic thing you would do is you would use what's called a limited hold. A limited hold just means in order for them to get the reinforcer, they would have to complete whatever the task analysis is. In this case, the visual schedule implies that there's some sort of task analysis for getting ready for school. They need to complete that task analysis under a certain amount of time. So if Jillian gets up and she has 1 hour before her bus comes, maybe she needs to finish her entire task analysis, the entire getting ready for school in 55 minutes. So that's what a limited hold is. It's when you require the learner to complete the schedule or the task analysis under a certain amount of time. So here, that would be what would actually speed things up for Jillian. So you could say, for example, if her morning routine typically takes her, and like I said, 50 minutes, and she only has an hour to get the bus. If she finishes it in 40 minutes, maybe she gets Fruit Loops instead of Cheerios. That would be a limited hold. And that would be essentially using that reinforcer to get her to be able to go faster. So your answer here is going to be a limited hold. And does that make sense to everybody in the chat? Because most people did go with D. So do we understand the distinction between a limited hold and a schedule leaps ahead? That was my goal for putting that into Trick You, was you could really understand the application of the difference of these.
Which ABA teaching methodology typically uses acceleration charts to track progress? A, precision teaching, B, direct instruction, C, programmed instruction, or D, personalized system of instruction? All right, you guys, your best answer here is going to be A, precision teaching. Now, with precision teaching, this is an evidence-based approach to behavior therapy, and it's often combined with applied behavior analysis. So this approach measures frequency and fluency of behaviors, skills, tasks, and these are charted on acceleration charts where students are tracking their progress on their fluency. And these charts are actually put up around the classroom so that they are used to guide instruction. And remember, with precision teaching, the student is always right. So if the acceleration charts show that progress is not being made, the teacher actually changes the way that they're teaching.
All right, perfect. Let's look at question number 5, which is not a covert behavior. A, thinking about being hungry. B, having a toothache. C, dreaming about summer. Or D, running. All right, I think everybody got it here. What is not a covert behavior is D, running. Right? So covert behavior is your private events. Those are going to be those behaviors that cannot be observed. So thinking is actually considered a private event, a covert behavior. If you're thinking about being hungry, it is potentially affecting your decisions, but it's not something we can observe. Having a toothache, thinking about being in pain, right? Experiencing pain, that is a covert behavior. Dreaming about summer, daydreaming is something we can't observe, but it is considered to be a covert behavior. What is not a covert behavior is running. Running is an overt behavior. meaning we can observe it. So if you have a hard time remembering the difference between covert and overt, just think overt starts with O, so it's observable. All right, very good, guys. Let's look at our last question, question 6.
What would you be least likely to use whole interval recording to track? A, reading during free time. B, attending to a book. C, listening to music during a car ride. Or D, manding for attention. All right, you guys, your best answer here is D, manding for attention. This would be least likely to use whole interval recording because it is discrete. A discrete behavior has a distinct beginning and end. So rather than using whole interval recording, you'd be better off using frequency. The other behaviors have longer durations in which using whole interval recording would make more sense, right? Because you're trying to track if that behavior occurs for the whole interval or not.